Welcome back to our special coverage of the 2016 presidential debate season. Before he was exiled to Elba and forever known more at being the inspiration for a pastry than one of the greatest military leaders in the history of the world, Napoleon Bonaparte said, and I quote, "History is the version of past events that people have decided to agree upon," unquote. The manner with which people and suspect media rewrite the facts on almost a daily basis these days is certainly testament to that. H.G. Wells, the noted novelist who brought us somewhat dark possibilities of our future in The Time Machine and other tomes, noted that human history becomes more and more a race between education and catastrophe. Both are somewhat fitting commentaries for this 2016 presidential debate season, because it would seem there are a good number of people who have already decided on what this new history will dictate even before it's written. And we have often found ourselves watching and listening to those who would seek to be president, deciding which individual will educate and lead, which one has the capacity to deliver little more than catastrophe. Let us then dive into history for what we can bring forth into the light of current debate events by welcoming the man who has lived through such debates and understands from the living room up what it takes for someone to prep and then deliver on that stage. Political commentator, author of Lessons My Father Taught Me, and the son of President Ronald Reagan. Let's welcome Michael Reagan to the show. Michael, always a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you, my friend. But let's start right here with history and debates. Is it not fair to say that if we go right back to the first televised debate, and we're going to play a couple of clips from it here in a moment, between Richard Nixon and John Kennedy, that really the rules haven't changed that much? This is television. You've got to look good, you've got to reach through the screen, and you've got to grab the voter by the throat.
Oh, absolutely right. And the first debate between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy also proved that the camera, the eye of the camera, sees everything. And that's what people are looking through. They're looking through that eye to see what you look like, to see if you look presidential. And in that debate, like they said, people who were listening on radio thought Nixon won the debate, but the people watching television believed that John F. Kennedy won the debate and ultimately goes on to become the president of the United States.
Let's hear a little bit of that debate in 1960 again, the first ever televised debate. Kennedy, very young guy, looked very fit, looked like the leader of America, and Richard Nixon at times just looked like he was old and even sometimes scared to death. Here we go.
Senator Kennedy has a responsibility to criticize those things that are wrong, but he has also a responsibility to be right in his criticism.
I really don't need Mr. Nixon to tell me about what my responsibilities are as a citizen. I've served this country for 14 years in the Congress and before that in the service.
It's also how you use your voice a little bit too, isn't it, Michael? Because you could hear that Nixon had that real hard edge in it. He wanted to go right at him, and Kennedy just kind of laid back a little bit, and that made all the difference.
It does make a difference, and that's what people, look at. I mean, it's not so much what you say, it's how you say it and how you're prepared for it. And if you go back and look at debates, people don't hear a lot of policy issues. Those put people to sleep. They see those kinds of back and forth. They look at you, Nixon sweating, no makeup, John F. Kennedy, makeup, prepared, young, vibrant. And he ends up taking it away.
Now, what you just said in there, how you say it, that's a part of it. But to me, it's also, you've got to be very specific, because we all know that we have a lot of the policy, we have these things down, but you've got to make sure that you're heard exactly as you mean it to be heard. 1976, Gerald Ford, when he talked about no countries were under Soviet rule, this was indeed the blooper that probably cost him the election. Here we go.
There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and there never will be under a Ford administration.
I'm sorry, could I just follow? Did I understand you to say, sir, that the Russians are not using Eastern Europe as their own sphere of influence and occupying most of the countries there and making sure with their troops that it's a communist zone?
Each of those countries is independent, autonomous. It has its own territorial integrity. And the United States does not concede that those countries are under the domination of the Soviet Union.
Michael, is it fair to say that back then we never had the word misspoke, which we have today? And then with all the media we have and the social media as well, you can attack somebody for that right away. But then all candidates have to do, it seems, to get away with it is back up and say, well, wait a minute, what I meant to say, I misspoke. You now have the ability to make up for it that you didn't have before.
Yeah, you have the ability, and Ford was given the ability to be able to say he misspoke, and he doubled down on it. But remember, those were the days of detente. It wasn't until after Ford, after Carter, a president, came around who said, our foreign policy is we win, they lose. And so what you saw in Ford, and I understood that, he was playing into the foreign policy of detente, and it ultimately helped with all the other things going on in his life, him to lose the election to Jimmy Carter.
If we are going to talk about debates, we have to talk about your dad, who had two of the greatest lines ever that actually made it for him. But I want to get a little bit of the backstory here from you. First of all, let's go a couple of days prior to the 1980 election, his debate with Jimmy Carter, and here's where that one famous line occurred. Here we go.
These are the kind of elements of a national health insurance important to the American people. Governor Reagan, again, typically is against such a proposal.
Governor, there you go again. When I opposed Medicare, there was another piece of legislation meeting the same problem before the Congress. I happened to favor the other piece of legislation and thought that it would be better for the senior citizens and provide better care than the one that was finally passed.
A line that is now in basic English lexicon. Everybody uses it these days. There you go again. Michael, was he prepared for that? Did he have that sitting in his back pocket? Or was that simply just the kind of thing that your dad would pull out of the air?
Well, he could have done it either way. There's a lot of things you put in your back pocket ready for a debate because you kind of know what the other side's going to come up with. But many times he would, in fact, just pull it out of thin air. But look at that. Here he says this to Jimmy Carter. At that point, he could have sat down and gone home because at that point, he won the debate. Nothing before, nothing after. It was that statement alone that won in the debate.
Now, let's go to the other statement here. And this is, it was more of a, the way it happened to me was, and this to me stands out as really one of the great moments in the debate. Your dad and Walter Mondale. This is 4 years later. And the whole issue about age came up. Your dad, I believe, was 73 at the time. Was that correct, 73?
I believe so.
Yeah, but 73 years of age, and people were saying, wait a minute, you're too old maybe to be president. This was classic and nailed it. Here we go.
You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience. If it was not for the elders correcting the mistakes of the young, there would be no state.
The thing that always captivated me there, Michael, is he was presidential when he said it. He did not waver in one instant. He used it, came right at it. There was no uhs, ahs, maybe, you knows. But that seemed to me to focus on it, being presidential. Yes?
Well, absolutely right. But again, one statement won the debate. In fact, the campaign manager for Walter Mondale, who was sitting in a hotel room watching that debate on TV to see how his candidate was doing, as soon as my father said that, the campaign manager looked at everybody else in the room and said, we just lost the debate and lost the presidency. That one line, the campaign manager said it was indeed over. You might remember the debate that they had first. My father was terrible. They overloaded him with all kinds of information, all kinds of issues, all kinds of policies, and my father was terrible. And what was the cry from us Reagans and from Nancy? Let Reagan be Reagan. And when Reagan became Reagan, he ultimately wiped the floor, if you will, with Walter Mondale in the next debate.
I got about a minute or so left here. That's what some of the advisors are telling both sides. To Hillary Clinton, be yourself. To Donald Trump, be yourself. Donald Trump is a very forceful power. He is just that kind of a guy. He does try to intimidate people, as he did on the stage. Here's Al Gore in the 2000 debate trying to intimidate George W. Bush. Watch what happens.
That's what the question in this campaign is about. It's not only what's your philosophy and what's your position on issues, but can you get things done? And I believe I can.
It was, Bush looked right at him, and he wasn't fazed at all. Isn't that the key here? When you're going to do something, if you have somebody trying to come at you in a debate, just relax, because the body language tells a lot.
Oh, the body language tells everything in this debate. And the debates between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are going to be the same way. It's going to be body language. And both of them have to be who they are. The thing that Donald Trump has going for him is when he's who he is, people like him. When Hillary's like she is and who she is, people don't like her. So she's going to have to overcome that with a television camera.
Yep, he is a force of nature. There's no doubt about it, and it's going to be tough for her in this entire debate season to make sure that she doesn't get run over. The book, once again, is Lessons My Father Taught Me. Michael Reagan, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll look forward to talking to you again.
You take care. Thank you.
Break. We're back with more on what has brought us to this stage of our presidential discourse and why far too often what we already have witnessed is indeed to laugh. The Newsmax Special on the 2016